Welcome to the Center for National Guard Militia Museum, New Jersey in Seagirt, a part of the is December 15, 2008. Francis Chickene, who served with the Army from February 13, 1941 until February 1946 in Europe, as well as served with the New Jersey National Guard from 1948 until October of 1972. Thank you so much for wanting to come here today, Colonel Chickene. Your eyewitness account is considered a primary historical source and a valuable contribution to my history project here at the Militia Museum. Good morning and welcome.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. How did you hear about the project?
I was here during the summer, and this Mr. Bilby,
Yes.
in conversing with him, I'd like to see some World War II veterans and mentioned the fact that they would do something historic on it. Mm-hmm. So I thought it'd be a pleasure after I do so.
Oh.
Then I decided to come in.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
good.
Was meeting you.
Thank you, and likewise. Let's go back to life prior to the service. You had been working at your family's funeral home.
Right.
And you were 21 at the time?
Right.
Wow, you look pretty good. How old you are. Oh, next year is your big birthday, right?
Yeah.
90.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think stop paying the survivor benefit plan the $360 taken from your pension and take the SP and it goes on your regular pension.
Mm-hmm.
But you.
Oh gosh. So
that became effective.
Oh, okay.
Hard, retired at 60, had 360 payments.
Oh, okay.
And my 30 years end up on my birthday, which is March 29th. So it should reflect in the payment of probably check. It's approximately $140 to $150 in that way.
So, you were years old when service. Now, how did you come to enter the service?
I had read about something about you get a letter or something. You were drafted or something. I was in Carney, and I stopped into the I remember that. The lady, am I supposed to go in service? So she looked up some. It will be called probably in somewhere around September, October here. The ruling then I put 1 year in. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, if I only go now, what do I do? She seemed rather shocked. And she said, well, if you want to go back to San Antonio, I'll arrange for your physical Thursday.
Oh.
So I went back, whatever history she wrote, and I went Thursday morning. We left Sussex Avenue in Newark. That's where the Army sent us. And then we went to Fort Dix that same day. Stayed at Fort Dix for And on Tuesday, whatever the date was, I wasn't in Dix much longer than 5 days, and then we were sent to Fort Bliss, Texas.
So your motivation for enlisting was you didn't want to wait to be drafted. You wanted to
Volunteered to go for a year. That was the ruling. You could only do a year. Sometime in the summer of 1941, Congress passed the ruling that there would be an unlimited time. By one vote, the Congress stated that that 1 year was out. You would stay as long as necessary. So in December of 1941, I never heard of Pearl Harbor before. And I was helping out the company clerk. He said, because there was another ruling said that if you were 28 or older, you could get out of service. And we had several men in the company I was in that were 28 or older, and the clerk asked me to help them with the service records. And we were about halfway through. We had a little radio on, and came over. Japan had bombed out Pearl Harbor. I had no idea where Pearl Harbor was. And within the hour, all the officers, the first sergeant, and all the people start coming in. Mm-hmm. And where I was when that happened. And after that, how far you want me to go?
Well, what were you doing at Fort Bliss?
Believe it or not, I started out after the basic training. We didn't have many vehicles. We were attached with the 1st Cavalry Division. And of course, they only had horses at the time, so they didn't have any heavy vehicles. So I was with a 72nd QM Battalion, LM. At that time, the quartermaster department was responsible for maintenance of vehicles. And all we had was a 2.5-ton truck, a couple of Jeeps, and maybe a 3/4-ton sedan. And we all had to take a driver's test. I was fortunate enough to be able to pass the test, and I drove the one truck that we had, 2.5-ton truck. I would report to the sergeant in the morning, pick up our rations, and come back in the afternoon. I would go to the supply sergeant, and whatever he had to do, we did. And after that, we'd get some of the men that were on duty, pick up all the garbage in the area, and after that, you cleaned your truck and got ready for the next day. And I did until I was taken out, because somewhere on the line I could type a little bit. I wasn't a typist by trade or anything, but I could do fairly well. And then we went to Louisiana on maneuvers, and when we came back, I was on a baseball team for a while to Phoenix and Tucson and Phoenix, 1942. Consisted of a platoon with our Lieutenant Banks, and they did a little maintenance work, but we primarily had the baseball players all in that, which we had already won the division title in the 1st division.
What position were you?
I was an outfielder, and then when we came back, one of my comrades, and they said he was going to OCS. And I said, well, if he can make it, I'm sure I'm going to make it. The company commander was not too happy because it was By this time, I was the company clerk. I was promoted to corporal, and I broke another man in. He didn't want me to go, but the first sergeant said, he can't stop you. And I went before a board, and I guess I passed, and I had to go to another board, and I passed there, and I was told I was going to Aberdeen, Maryland, in the ordnance department. I was shocked because I didn't even know what the ordnance department was, because we were quartermaster maintenance. So I went to OCS around the first week of July of 1942, and I graduated, I think, from the 10th class in October of 1942. I was commissioned a second lieutenant. And I made the progressive moves. I was a platoon leader. And after a while, I was transferred to the battalion. I was an adjutant. I was a battalion supply officer. Then I was a company commander. And
where was that? After Aberdeen?
After Aberdeen, and this is a coincidence, another friend of mine and I were walking, and I met my old platoon leader, who is now a captain, in the school. And I was to see him, and he said, you know, I'm going back to Bliss. I'm going to have a company, a new company. I'm looking for officers. Would you be interested? He said, you and your friend? I said, yes. He arranged to take us, and we went to this, I don't think you know what a ham company is. Mm. It was the new, it's a heavy automotive maintenance. Now, the 854th Ordnance Company, and we were still under the 72nd Ordnance Battalion. And he progressed up to the battalion, and we had a captain that came in as our company commander. And I was sent to school in Camp Norm Oil in San Antonio, Texas, for maintenance school. And after that, they told me I could go home for 10 days, which I did. When I come back, they said I was selected with another officer and some enlisted men. We were going to be an advanced party going overseas. And I don't exactly remember the date, but we went overseas and we flouted all over. Nobody knew where we belonged.
How did you get across the Atlantic?
We were on the Queen Mary that had, at the time, 16,500 troops. And we zigzagged our way. We left on a Sunday morning out of New York, and we arrived in Scotland on the Friday night. And then we were Gourock, Scotland. And then we were sent to the headquarters of in the ETO, where they were the ordnance headquarters for the ETO. They had two sections, supply and maintenance. I went in the maintenance section. My friend, who was the supply sergeant, he went to the supply section.
And where was that?
And that was in, what was the name of the city? It was in England.
Right.
I'd have to look up and see.
Southampton?
No, it started with a C.
Okay.
We stayed there a while, but because our company, the headquarters that was to follow us, didn't arrive, and we were just assigned. We were there for several weeks, and they said, well, your your rest of your unit, we don't know where they are. They haven't arrived here yet. So I went out on the road because by this time I knew about the English, how the money worked out, and some of the things you should do and not do, and not to annoy about the people and say, you know, we're here to save you and all that stuff. So I went and met the new companies coming in and explained to them, wrote a pack of papers and taught them how to use the money, what was a pound and what it was worth, and several other coins that were good to know about. And that was the assignment I had in the maintenance section. I would take care of the deadline reports that they would send in. And I was sent out a couple times. Once I went to Liverpool and then to London on some of the units that were lagging. And my company finally, my headquarters finally arrived. They had us go to Taunton, England, somewhere else, and we went to North Africa for no reason at all. They didn't know what we were doing.
Wow.
We were there about 2 days, and we went back to England.
What was that trip like?
That's somebody who just got the idea that maybe we belonged over there. Nobody seemed to have any idea where we were going. For some reason, finally the unit came over, and I was back in England, and they wanted me to stay there because the lieutenant colonel said the promotions are all, you know, you'll get them here rather than in your company. But I felt I preferred to go with my unit. And we were assigned to a depot in England that was in charge of the waterproofing of all the vehicles prior to the invasion. Of course, now, in today's world, it's a lot different. But in those days, you had to have waterproofing around your carburetors and all the parts in the engine that required, you know, to operate in the water when you would go through. We had a group of engineers assigned. They were not part of our unit. We fed them and housed them and so on. They were the ones that were making up all the plans with some of our people.
So what did you use to waterproof the engines?
Oh, I don't know what they call it. We call it a gook. It looked like a lot of putty stuff, you know.
Oh, okay.
And once they on land, they had to take all that off. So that was what our assignment was. In addition, we had a huge depot. We had parts. We would get 20 trucks of parts. And I was a battalion supply officer, but we had a company there who were running the depot before we were there. We became the parent unit. And I was awarded a medal for figuring the reason we were, with all these parts, we had a full colonel came over from Detroit or something, because they said some of the parts that were to go to the combat units were a little slow. And at this meeting, he said, what kind of a procedure are you doing? And I said, well, the supply officer, who was from the higher headquarters, said, when you get these parts in, you have to open the boxes and count them and make sure they're what the shipping document says they're there. For instance, if there were 10 carburetors, we had to open a box and then close it. And I said to the colonel, I said, I don't agree with that, but this is what the supply man wants. He said, well, what do you suggest? Let's take the boxes and take the word that on the box it says 10, we'll send them. send them right out because it'd take us sometimes 2 days or more just to open and re-nail all the boxes and count the parts. I said, they're going to count them anyway when they get them.
Oh, okay.
So why do we have to do it? What we should do, we had hundreds of requisitions, and we knew that certain boxes went to a certain place, and we could ship them out. Like if we didn't have to open boxes and close them, and that took 2 days.
Could have been more efficient.
Yeah, we just look in, and I said to the colonel, I've been in supply of quite a bit. They want probably, they need 4, they're going to ask for 6 or 7, and if they can get 5, they'll be happy. I'd say 90% efficient when the parts come in. Maybe if they didn't have 10, they might have had 9, but I don't think it mattered that much. So we reformed it, and he said, well, that's good. And they said, well, you deserve a medal for that.
Wow.
And I reduced the time from 3 days to 24 hours. And you had some obstacles, administrative and so on. So that was the main project that we had to do. Plus, we ran a school teaching them how to waterproof vehicles. They would go back to their units and teach them.
So that wasn't just for D-Day, that was also for crossing the rivers, right?
Well,
Like driving the
we were
trucks?
at a place called Instow Beach. It was the Navy running it, and we used to they had a little sort of a ship there, and we would test them out there. And the engineers and all, they did a lot of that. But it apparently worked out. And in addition, we didn't have a camp yet. We were housed with the civilian families. And
In England?
in England.
Right.
I was with a family there, and we had quite a job when we would get all these students coming in. They had to be housed, and as I say, the camp that they were building wasn't ready yet, and we had to find out housing and so many here, so many. And that way, we were with the civilian housing, and then eventually the camp was finished. And I think we were there a couple of months, and we left to go to France.
So when was that the camp wasn't done? 43?
This was in I'd say it was probably finished in earlier part of maybe a couple of months after 1944, sometime in the spring. The camp was finished, and we moved in for a few months. Then we went overseas to the area where we did a lot of supply. We had to supply not only our people, but we had to supply the French government and the English requisitions from them too.
Interesting.
So we had, it's quite a depot. I think it was, I'm not sure, but I think it was 0617 was our number. And that's a lot of where waterproofing was done. We had the outer garments that were like waterproof when you were going to test anything. And we would invite, was a purpose behind it, like some of the doctors in Barnstable in England, they used to come over, and it was new to them, doctor going in water like that. And we did that because whenever they would have a party, they would invite us because they had nurses there.
Oh, okay.
And so that was part of our work.
So when you would do the demonstrations, how far underwater would you go?
Well,
Like up to your neck?
well, you could go into the vehicle. Yeah, you'd be up there, and they had a pipe
Right.
that connected it. And it wasn't sure. It was only a short trip with where we were, you know, and they.
But were you completely submerged, or?
No, I don't. It was completely.
Okay.
You'd have to see where you're going, and but it worked out. And these engineers, they were the ones that knew how to mix this compound and all that. We called it gook.
Yeah.
Looked just like a soft putty, and
Right.
you could mold it around the spark plugs and things like that. So that was, and in France we had a depot that we supplied parts all over.
So where did you go in France, and when was that?
That was in the fall, I think,
44?
in '44. I don't know the exact date.
Uh-huh.
And then we were in this depot, and it was a little town. First, we went to around the St. Lo area, where we were in a field. We ran a vehicle issue park, which meant that we had all the general purpose vehicles, not tanks or anything. So, for instance, if a unit came in, we had a list. They were supposed to get 2 Jeeps, 2.5-ton trucks, and so on and so forth. We had a vehicle issue park, and they would come into where I was, and then we would tell them that, okay, you're assigned these vehicles. I would call down, radio down, and say, so-and-so's coming down for their vehicles. And lots of times in the Army, the vehicles would be there, and the people weren't in yet, and then sometimes it would work just the other way. So we had to manipulate. So, for instance, the unit would come in, we didn't have their vehicles yet. But we had vehicles for people that weren't in yet.
Oh.
So we had to manipulate, and it worked out.
Right.
It's what they call a vehicle issue park. There was no combat vehicle like tanks or
Right.
anything like that, just so they could get around.
Were there any difficulties, like with mud or the terrain or anything?
It wasn't bad,
Yeah.
no.
And what were living conditions like for you?
Oh, good. We had an excellent. See, we were just the headquarters. We had about 7 officers, but we had a large amount. We had about 6 or 7 companies that were spread around, but we had what they call an old chateau in a little town called Courbevoie. And but before that, we were out in some woods. I can't even remember where it was. But I remember one of my sergeants in the company. When we landed, we were just standing at night, and the colonel wanted someone. Does anybody know how to take shorthand? And we looked up, and there was one of the fellows in the outfit that could take shorthand. And well, in the meantime, we were exchanging our funds. So when he came back, we said, "Where are we going?" He took out a 2-franc note. It worth like 2 cents. It was paper. He says to me, "Captain," he said, "where we're going, this will last you a month." We were in the woods. Where could we go?
Oh, okay.
You know, so, but we were there. And they had the regular Army Lieutenant Colonel. He was the commander of the troops there. And then we had to do our exercise every morning and so on and so forth. And it was good. You had to wear your helmet constantly. Even if you went to the next tent, he was very strict about all that.
And did you carry a sidearm?
Yeah, but you had your pistol.
Yeah.
But that was most of the career that we had. Then towards the end, I had an ordnance company, and they were getting ready. Now we were starting to count the points. The war had ended, or they'd figured out sometimes how many points you had, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then we had all the ones that we were in France then. I don't remember where. They, sometimes they'd have 2 first sergeants and duplicate. The rank meant nothing as far as the table of organization. These were collective men who were ready to go home. I had them maybe 2 or 3 months. And but they did some work while they were there. They did some maintenance work and so on. But then we went to, I think it was a Camp Lucky Strike or something like that. That's what they named a lot of the camps for people that were going back after the cigarettes. I think they had Chesterfield. I guess
okay.
Lucky Strike. I remember we were in Lucky Strike, and we sailed back on a Italian vessel, which normally held about 7,500. We had like 14,000 on it.
Oh my God.
And we were on Thanksgiving Day, we were on the sea. We were on the way back to New York. But and the reason I had 90 days leave coming, because
Wow.
Well, where could we go? We're on the field, and where could you go? But I had 90 days leave, so when I came home, it was in the latter part of November, but I had leave going until February.
That's amazing.
I had 90 days. That was the maximum you could get. And I took, I didn't have any choice. February 19th was when I was actually released from service. And I went into they automatically put you in the
Reserves.
Reserves. I never went to anything. Then they had a drive. I read about it in the newspaper that they were going to, something about the National Guard and so on. So I decided to take a chance, because in the interim period I was promoted to a major. So when I went to the 1st Cavalry, 102nd Cavalry. They wanted to take me as a captain. I said no. But he led me to one of the units that had just lost one of their majors. He said they can use the major down there. He knew they had an opening.
Where was that?
In the National Guard.
I know, but where?
It was in the 50th Armored Division. They were in Newark. Well, they were in Orange and then Newark. They moved around. But I went there, and he said, well, I'll take you on a trial. I said, oh, no. And I remembered him because I gave him, not gave him, but he came in with the 44th Infantry Division when I was in France, and we gave them their vehicles.
Oh.
He didn't remember me, but I remembered him.
Who was that?
I forget his last name. His car. He was I think he was a state maintenance officer. But anyway, he took me in, and I went to. My first drill was in Orange, and there was a major there by the name of Bill Stevens. He couldn't make camp because his wife was expecting a child any day. He was going at a later date. He said, you're going to have to take the battalion up. And because I was a major, so, but he was a senior major to me. And he said the battalion commander's already up there. So I took the battalion up.
Where was that, Pine Camp?
Yeah, we went to, those days it was Camp Drum.
Okay.
But it became Fort Drum later on
New York.
in New York. And we went up. That was the first trip I made, was in 1948. And I was the only major that was in the whole battalion. So when I got there, I got news that the battalion commander, something happened to him, and he wasn't going to be available anymore. So I had to take them back again. It worked out. I already had experience with convoys.
Oh, okay.
And then we moved down to Port Newark, New Jersey, in the latter part of '48. And there's a Colonel Thorpe, who was the new state maintenance officer. He was the commander of our battalion. And he interviewed each one of us, and this Major Stevens became the assistant. I was made the executive officer and the 3 with the training. You made up all the training schedules and so on. And I did pretty well. In fact, I was promoted, not promoted, I was appointed to battalion commander in 1951. And it was a little awkward because there was a major that outranked me. But I put a lot of time in the Guard because I had, some time on my hand. I would go down during the day, any day, and made up training schedules for, we had a big battalion. We had 4 companies. And so Colonel Thorpe recommended me because he was moved up to what they call division trains. Then I think it's support command now. And a couple of years later, they opened up a new armory, and we moved into that. I was a station commander there, and I commanded this battalion for 13 years.
And that was in Newark also?
That was in Lodi. Part of it in Newark, but then we moved to a new armory in Lodi.
And how did the Cold War and the Korea War affect your service?
Not so much. We had noticed that we may be called.
Oh, okay.
And we had a meeting on it, and they told us that what to do, what to tell your wife, that she had her portion if they were ever to come out. We didn't know anything about it. But we were not called to service. I think they selected a unit from Tennessee. Then when I got through with the Ordnance Battalion, they transferred me to another port. I was in called the 119th QM Group, which had 2 Ordnance battalions, a truck battalion, dental detachment, and the band that were attached to it for rations and stuff like that. And I committed, then they disbanded that unit after about 4 or 5 years. But in the interim period, I was promoted to colonel, I think, because I had to take all the series, even though I finished the ordnance portion. They said, well, you're now a QM, but the QM had no quartermaster at all in it. We had 2 ordnance battalions and a truck battalion. And during the Vietnam, one of the companies from the truck battalion were called into active duty. And
so these were men who served under you?
yeah, they were one of the companies of the truck battalion, and they Army was not very fair. They always told us that they would take the unit as a body, but we found out that they would send maybe 20 men here and 25 men here, and it was disturbing because they were split up. So when they came back, they may have rejoined, but they didn't operate as a unit. They were just sent, the men were sent to different places. So finally, we couldn't do anything about it. They took the people and did what they wanted, which created a problem, you know, for recruiting, trying to retain these people.
Because they felt isolated?
Yeah, they felt that they went, I forget the name of the unit. Yeah, they figured they'd go as a unit that they trained with for all the time they were in the Guard. And when they got there, they split them up.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know whatever happened. But when they came back, they weren't, overly anxious to come back. We had to try to keep them from not re-enlisting.
Okay.
But we did pretty well. In the beginning, they didn't, I must have had 100 letters that, for reasons they didn't, all had reasons they couldn't go on active duty. And this battalion commander, I said, what are you doing about it? Well, he sent everything up to us, to me, and I had to make the decision whether these 145 men could go or not. We had 100 letters, because everybody had an excuse. But we managed, we knocked them down. And there were some serious problems, but when you're in the Guard, I used to kid myself. I get a lot of friends would say to me, my son, he's going to go in the Army. Can you help him out? Get him in the Guard? Yeah, get him in the Guard. And if that unit went in, I went from a hero to a...
Oh, did that happen?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The father is a friend of mine. I'll get him in one of my units. Of course, then when they were called for active duty, the parents went wild, and the phone never stopped ringing.
Did everything work out, though?
Oh, yeah, it worked out.
With the soldier?
We couldn't do anything about it.
No, I mean, did they make it home okay?
Pardon?
Did the soldier make it home okay from Vietnam?
Oh, yeah. They all came back. We didn't have any casualties.
Oh, that's good.
To my knowledge.
Right.
So, but, I could feel as a parent, they thought he would be safe there, but I couldn't control anything.
Right.
So, told my son he was going to be safe in the Guard and all that. So they called it one unit in, that's all.
Right.
And we, when I got there, the new unit, we had to do some changing because even the general, he wasn't satisfied with the way they were running. And he told me, he said, you go there, meet with the old commander, and then do as you darn well please. And we had to make some changes in the matter of how the units operated. See, we had 2 battalions. I don't know if you're familiar, but they're supposed to do their maintenance and supply work depending on their ability to work and the tools they needed for a certain type of work. The other battalion did the same thing, only on a heavier, they took a heavier load, the same as the other ones did, but they had the tools to do more on some tank work perhaps than the other. The way they had it, one company did all the light maintenance and the other one did all the heavy, and that's not right because you have 2 units. one unit's supposed to do everything with their capability and the parts, and not the parts, but their equipment that they have to do that work. They do a certain amount of work. The other unit does the same thing, only on a heavier basis. You just can't have one unit doing all the light work and one doing all the heavy.
Right.
They're supposed to do all the work, only on a lighter scale. And so we had to change the whole system over, where the units did light type work only, and a lighter group here and the next group there. And the truck battalion that was something different altogether. And one year we went down to Camp Pickett in Virginia when I was with the Guard, and I was a commander of troops there. They were very good, but I said, well, you know, they came in and wanted it. This was the people on the post. I said, we're self-sufficient. All you have to do is give us the gasoline. And we had one of the men from the Department of Defense, that's all he did, was keep track of what the New Jersey owed to the state of Virginia, or the Guard in Virginia. We didn't have gasoline. You know, you can't carry gasoline with you, so we used their gasoline, and I guess New Jersey has to compensate them when we had a man that did nothing but that. And that was an interesting camp. It was small, but they had a medical unit there. We did anything for maintenance and supply. And they had a bakery there. And you'd go there and they would be, you know, to give you a dozen or two fresh rolls, warm, and we would take them back to the unit. One time I stopped there and they said something went wrong with their, they had conveyors and all that. I said, well, maybe we can help you. And I got some of the men from our companies that went over there and looked, and they fixed it.
Uh-huh.
My gosh, when I went back there, I could have the 100 rolls if I wanted them.
Oh, wow.
They were very happy that we took care of the problem that they had. It was a good, and we came back, and by that time they had the strike in Newark, the riot. And we were in the tail end of that period.
So what did you see? What was your mission?
Well, they took some people. I wasn't personally involved in that. But what they did do was change the training. We never had riot training before. So after the riots, then we had training in riot training. And then the state police had more authority, for instance, than we did. Like, for instance, if someone was doing something wrong, we could apprehend them. They could be apprehended, but the state police could arrest them.
Right.
We had no arresting power. And
you would bring them to the state police?
Yeah, the state police did that. And
what about closing off the city? Who did that?
Was not, as I say, I wasn't too involved in that, but I guess the Guard and the city of Newark and Plainfield, where they had the riots, I remember that the mayor and General Campbell, I don't know if you remember any of them, he was a great man, and he was now they call it adjutant general, but he used the term chief of staff. And he was a great leader, outstanding. And he worked out, it ended, but I think they learned the lesson in the training of riot training. Particularly, they had some of our troops. There would probably be some people up on a roof, and they would try to hit the roof, and maybe they would be off target and go into somebody's apartment.
Oh, there were tanks in Newark?
Yeah, they had the firing
Right.
at the, whatever the situation called for. I was not involved. But you hear everything.
Yeah.
And so that was it as far as my career. And then I, after they disbanded the 119th Group, I was put on the staff. I was the adjutant. No, they had a full-time, what was he?
S3 or no?
What was he? He was the IG, the Inspector General. He was full-time. He was gone, and I was appointed for a year. I think I had a year as the IG, and some interesting cases. And after that, I was assigned to what they call a think tank. The think tank, we would get a problem from or whatever the adjutant general or the chief of staff would give us a problem, and we had to come up with a solution. I think it was 4 or 5 of us in the think tank, and we did that, particularly in the summer field training time. We would go to Seagirt here, and at that time we were in a place, we were all colonels, so they called it the Eagle's Nest. That was the building 25, I think. And it was Ray Brown, McLean, about 5 of us. And we did some good work, whatever they had a problem with. In many cases, they forgot that there was a ruling in the books of New Jersey that when they didn't put the full, at the end of the war, they never changed and said that the emergency stopped, and it kept going. And so some of these people that were, they were drawing pay and all from their civilian job because they were still on the active duty.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? The war ended, but they never put it in the regulation that they had. So
Which war was that?
World War II.
Right.
But they, at the end of the war, I forget what they call it. When everything ceased, they were supposed to put that as of, say, January 15th of whatever year, and they didn't do it, so that was a problem that we were faced with. And some of the men that were on active duty and they came from the Guard, maybe their position, their pension might have been, say, $12,000, or their salary, $10,000, and then 10 years later, they retired at that salary, and they wanted to say, no, we want to get paid on our present salary. But, you know, you can't have it both ways. How do we know what that pay was going to be? If you were making $12,500 when you were working, and 8 or 9 years later you were in a different position, so they're not going to give you the fact that you could have been that far ahead. We didn't know that. So there was a couple of disputes on that, which we solved. But
And so you wrapped up your career here in Seagirt, and that was during the Vietnam War?
that was 1972, yeah. I had no choice because the regulation was that as a colonel, you had to have either 5 years in grade or 30 years of commissioned service, whichever came later.
Oh.
Now, I was a colonel from 1964 or 5. I think it was 1965. And that didn't take me out because I was already a colonel like for 7 years. But the 30 years commissioned service, because I was commissioned on October 10th, 1942, and my 30 years expired in October of 1972. But I was in what they call a gray area because I was too young to be retired with pay. So I went from 1972 to 1979.
You were only 50-something?
Yeah, I was 53 when I got
okay.
out. So I had to wait 7 years. And if anything had happened in that time, the old rule was you don't get any. Your beneficiary got nothing.
If anything happened to you?
Yes.
Before you turned 60?
But that subsequently was changed. But I had it happen because we had a warrant officer in our outfit who was ready to get out. He died about 2 or 3 months beforehand, and he never made the 60-year-old. And his wife was unfortunate, and that happened to a couple other officers. But they subsequently made a change there that if you didn't get a full amount, I think you got a proportionate share. But I went 7 years. If anything had happened to me, I would never get a pension.
So what did you do in those 7 years?
Well, I went back to my family and I became the owner. I bought everybody out. My sister-in-law and her son. My brother had died. He was the original owner in 1933. So when I came back, I think...
the owner of?
The funeral home. And I went to school for that.
Is it still around, the funeral home?
No, I retired in the 80s.
Oh.
But I bought them all out in the 50s, somewhere around that. So I had about 30 more years put in. And, you get tired after a while.
Wow.
So that was it. The rest of the time, I'm still active with the Guard as far as going to the functions and meetings. In fact, 3 of us established a group of retirees that meet now once a month. And we meet in the restaurant in Trenton.
Oh.
And we do pretty well. And it was 3 of us that started it. It was General Amadeo. He was the deputy to General Menard. And it was a fellow, Charlie Hill. He was the administrative chief, and we started it. We went to lunch together down here in Spring Lake. And we said, let's get an informal group together. And we built it up. Sometimes we have 25, 30 people.
That's great.
And now in the last 2 or 3 years, they had once a year around December, you bring your spouse and they don't pay for any, you don't pay. So that the group absorbs it. We have a little raffle and it works out well. The ladies come once a year. And so that's what takes up time. I go to a lot of the artillery activity. We had a big one on New Year's Eve, Armistice Day. They try to get a Saturday as close to the 11th as they can. They have a weekend. They have a little thing on Friday, dinner and dancing on Saturday. Then they have the ceremony on Sunday morning with the Army band, and they fire their little cannon there. And it's a good program. I don't know what else I can tell you.
Oh, did you use your GI benefits?
Yes, I went to school with that in in fact, I started in January of 1946, and I used the GI benefits there. And I guess when I bought my first house,
Right.
1947 or 8, I can't remember, but I used the GI Bill to get the mortgage, and that 4%, I think, was guaranteed by the government.
And when you were in Newark, is that when you knew the writer Warren Kennett?
Yes, yeah, I met because one of my officers, Captain Riley, he and Warren were, I think, together in World War II. And he used to come down, and he made many of the trips. General Cantwell was, to me, he was one of the pillars of the National Guard. He was in the National Guard Association. He was a president, and he really did a fantastic job. And of course, we in New Jersey, you had to join the association. We had 100%, and he was a fantastic leader. We had, when I first went in, we had General Powell. He was the division commander. Then we had General McGowan, and then General McGowan was sent to Washington, and we got General Wolfe. General Wolfe was probably one of the most outstanding generals I ever came across. He was brilliant. He looked like a general, and he acted like a general. He just was, to me anyway. And I got along with him. Even as my position was a dual one, as a battalion commander, but you were also on the special staff as a division ordnance officer. And anytime he needed things done in a certain way, and I used to kid around and tell him, and he would say, well, who's the division commander, you or me?
Right.
So we had our disagreements, but I mean, he was brilliant. One of the best generals I've ever came across. He was really good.
So do you have any Warren Kennett stories that you want to share?
Well, I mean, they were personal, not anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we would go to, when we were in Hawaii together. I made many trips with the Guard, with General Cantwell. We were delegates, and we would fly. For instance, went to Miami a few times, and went to Philadelphia, Washington, San Antonio, down to as far as Louisiana. We went to New Orleans, San Antonio. We went to Denver. Went to Phoenix, Arizona. We went to Oregon, Salem, I think it is. We made a lot of trips. And he was on many of these trips.
Oh.
And the general would have, for instance, the police chief of Trenton. He was a guest on him, and he was a good friend of mine, too. But they were, and General Campbell, as I say, was a very powerful individual in the association. And as far as Warren Kennett, we just would go out and try to, maybe have a few drinks together and stuff like that. I don't know if I can relate a story, but it's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
It was a good friend of mine, was Dr. Albano, who was the medical battalion commander. He was a colonel. And Warren was, the three of us were out, we had drink, and I think at the time the drinks were only $1.50 for a Mai Tai or whatever the drink was in Hawaii.
Oh.
And we'd take turn. I'd put a $5 and tell the bartender to keep the change. It was 50 cents. It was a tip. So Warren, you know, after 2 drinks, he bought a drink. He put $10 on the bar. And the bartender did the same thing as he did with us. He gave him 50 cents back. Warren says, "Whoa, where's the rest of the change?" And the bartender said, "Well, sir, you get your 5. He said, "No, look in." And
Oh, gosh.
he was, you know, he would have his drink, but he knew what he was doing. He wrote up a lot of good stories on the guard. I mean, pro and con. If he didn't think it was going well, I was fortunate that our outfit usually did a good job, which we did.
And how long was he in the Guard?
I don't think he was in the Guard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But he was a correspondent for what the paper doesn't exist anymore, the Newark News.
Right.
He was a correspondent.
But he was in the Army overseas?
I don't think he was in the service.
Oh, I thought he was.
He was a correspondent. To my knowledge, I never saw him in a uniform. I never saw him overseas. I can't...
So the reason you ever knew him was he was friends with General Cantwell?
No, he was a friend of one of my officers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then I was introduced to him, and then we became friendly. Because I would probably know him a good 20 years or more.
Oh, that's nice.
But he was a good correspondent. And he was in the, I guess he was a correspondent in the wartime overseas.
Yes.
I never knew him then.
Right. So when did you first join a veterans group? Or did you?
Yes, I'm proud to say that I'm a member of the National American Legion for, I think, 62 consecutive years.
Oh my goodness.
With the same post. I had the wallet to show it, and I belong to the Veterans of Foreign Wars for a long, long time. And I belonged to many organizations. I was in, I'm a life member of the National Guard Association, and I was they had a little ordnance association, which they honored me as a lifetime member, and a lot of civilian activities.
Oh.
Because I was not a full-time guardsman. But when you're in business, you have to belong to a lot of things.
Oh, I see.
I belong to the Elks now.
Right.
And I belong to the Field Artillery Association, the 112th Field Artillery. And I'm a lifetime member, as I say, of the National Guard Association of the United States.
Oh, okay. And do you speak of your experiences much?
Well, you mean the military experiences? When we get together, we've nicknamed the association with no name to it, but we say it's the Liars Club.
Oh.
You know how things get exaggerated.
Of course.
We'll just say, for example, if you were in combat, maybe you knocked off 2, by the time they get through the story, 20 years later, it was probably 10.
Right, of course.
But everybody had a good time. They, you know, some of them think that they're still able to go. One man said to me, you know, we should go back as instructors. I said, instructors? At our age, I can't even climb on to get on a tank. I said, it's not like years ago. Now everything has a computer. They have automatic weapons and things. What do we do? And things like that. They forget that they're in an age bracket that's history.
Oh, and that's why you're here today.
Probably, yeah. And but I had a good career. I enjoyed the Guard. But I put a lot of time in. And I used to kid General Wolf. I said, I've been here 13 years. It's unusual to have a command that long. I said, I'm either doing very well or I don't trust to go anywhere else.
Right.
But he did, I think he had a respect for me too.
And looking back, when you first enlisted, you thought it would just be for 1 year.
Yes, yes.
Were you upset when that law changed?
No, because...
Because you had come to enjoy it.
Yeah, I enjoyed enlisted man. I was enlisted man from, February until I graduated OCS. And it was a good experience, You're... everything regimented. And I was in Aberdeen. I thought Aberdeen was out of this world. I thought, and it's only about 160 miles from home. But I never got home because you had to have, to get out. I never went but one weekend, and we went to Baltimore. That's the only time I got out on a weekend.
So let me ask you, what's your opinion about Fort Monmouth moving to Aberdeen?
Very disappointing. Very disappointing. And
can you envision it though? Since you've been to Aberdeen?
Well, of course, Aberdeen in 1942, I'm sure it's a lot different than it is today. But I feel that it's what they have up at Fort Monmouth. My wife worked in the government for 33 years. She was worked for the New Jersey National Guard for maybe half that time. And then she worked at the...
Where was she?
Fort Monmouth, but there was a different building called Chickene.
Yes.
She worked there, and then they transferred her down to... can't think of it right now. They did a lot of good work there.
Hexagon?
No. It was...
Was it part of Fort Monmouth?
Yes.
Charles Wood? My husband's a fireman there.
Oh, yeah. Well, she worked there. They had a program. She was when she was in the Guard, she was in the contracting force of it.
But she wasn't here in Seagirt?
No, they worked out of Trenton and Lawrenceville.
Oh, okay.
And she was transferred from there to, and she applied at Fort Monmouth, and she was accepted. Of course, the pay scale was much higher there than it was with the Guard. She went, I think she went in as a 9, and she came out after 33 years as I think she was a 13. And, but the unit she worked in did a lot of work that they used in the first global, what was it, when they were in Kuwait and all that. They made where they made some sort of a glasses that you could look down at night and it would be like daylight.
Oh, the night vision goggles?
Yeah. They were in that, and they changed the name of it, but she worked there quite a while. And she did well. 33 years she had with the government.
That's good. Well, Colonel, before we look at your medals and things, I just want to say that I'm honored and humbled that you came here today to speak to me of your sacrifices and contributions that you made in service to our country.
Well, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Colonel. God bless you.
Thank you. They gave out, I went to the dedication of the World War II veterans in Trenton.
Oh, nice. I heard about that.
I got a commemorative coin,
yeah.
but I don't know where it is. Now this is this.
Yorkshire duck.
See this? This is this. And this is miniatures here.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think you want these. It's a duplicate.
Now the Bronze Star is for St. Lo.
For what?
What is this for, the Bronze Star?
That was for the changing of the supply.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
That I did. This is what they call the American Defense Medal if you served before the war, World War II.
Oh, interesting. Here, let me see.
Yeah, that one, and I don't know. Here's this belongs with this. It's a medal, and this came from the 112th field. That's the St. Barbara.
Oh, I never heard of that.
Yeah, that's the.
What does that mean, St. Barbara?
That's their
patron saint of artillery?
Yes.
Oh, I never knew that. It's interesting.
It's written in there somewhere.
Yeah, the Military Order of St. Barbara. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Barbara, okay.
And then here's as a recipient of the Bronze Star, the New Jersey gives you
What is this?
that might be the Croix de Guerre from France. Avec étoile means with star.
Now, what's the story behind this?
I don't know it. I don't know whether that's it or not, but it's usually awarded to the unit.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a unit, you can wear it. I don't know what that is, and I don't know what this is.
Okay.
But this here is on there, and this is the ruptured duck.
Yeah.
And this might be for here. There's also a ribbon here I should have, and I don't know what I did with it. That's the Distinguished Service Medal from New Jersey. For instance, if you get the Bronze Star, they give you that. If you got a Silver Star, you get a different award.
Actually, we have the order form. I give this to the veterans. If they were enlisted out of Jersey, they can get this.
Yeah.
If they enlisted out of state, but they live in Jersey now, they can get the meritorious New Jersey medal.
Well, these are
nice. And you can wear this on your cap, right?
no.
No?
Wear them on your
Oh, your jacket.
they're for your jacket.
I've seen veterans with the American Legion caps, and they
Yeah.
wear them all
Well,
over.
I'm not active in these, veterans like the VFW and things like that.
Very nice. What's the story behind the pictures?
I was on a trip watching the Air Guard refuel planes in the air. They did 2 planes, and I was watching them
Okay.
from the.
I have the picture.
I was lying flat,
Oh,
fueling them.
it's a nice picture.
Must have been a drum or something.
Did you take it, or are you in it?
I don't know. It's hard to me figure out where I was or whether I took it